Hello and welcome to the Exponential Potential podcast, helping you thrive in times of change, with your hosts Claire Oatway and Jennifer Evans, aka Zen Jen, along with expert guests sharing with you uplifting, inspiring and insightful stories, groundbreaking, rule-shaking ideas, fresh new exciting perspective and truly transformational tools and top tips, as well as generous gifts for you, our listeners, on an array of topics, all designed to help you thrive in all areas of life. So sit back and enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to Exponential Potential, and we are joined today by a remarkable woman. And before I dive into her bio and describe all that Dawn Richard is about, I just want to kind of hold that space. I've known Dawn, it's a short while, but it seems like a really long while. It just feels like we resonate and bounce off each other really well, and our conversations are far-reaching. Sex to AI to Zoom to relationships,
spirituality, to God, the being.
It's just, we are in such a playful, joyful, creative space together, and I'm just delighted to have you here on the podcast to introduce you to our listeners, and for them to learn a little bit more about what you do and who you are. And Dawn, I see you, baby. I'm so pleased that I can see you.
I'm so excited to be here, Claire. I mean, even our conversation that we just had is like, why weren't we recording that?
Always good to introduce some FOMO.
Yeah, we do.
So Dawn, let me introduce you properly.
Okay.
You are known as the Queen of Intimacy, and you're a licensed professional counsellor in marriage and family systems. You have been for 20 years.
A long time.
And you've helped many couples to heal their relationships. But I think kind of one of the lessons that you're really candid about and that you bring to your work and you bring to your community is that even though you are able to support many couples, you hadn't been able to support your own marriage. And unfortunately, that broke down. Because though you chose to value yourself over your relationship, which is really important. Now you are a restorative love coach. You're a women's empowerment speaker. You teach people to heal from within, which is really key, and become the intimate partner that people are searching for. Right. I'm already thinking, I need to ask you this question. We met in part because of your podcast, Wake Up to Real Love, and had such a ball sharing some of my own stories from relationships and intimacy with you. But through that, you normalize relationship struggles. You give people tools to grow and to evolve together. You help them and empower them to learn about the most important relationship they'll ever have. And you do that with such grace and curiosity and playfulness, and in such a nurturing sense. And so I am delighted that you're here.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. I'm so glad to be here because we do have beautiful conversations. And when I first met you, just so many things about you. I mean, your grace, your peace, your presence, and I feel like we all reflect each other. And so you're just a beautiful being. So I'm super grateful to be here. Thank you for having me.
So let me start with the question that popped up when we were going through your bio, which is around, the intimate, how you become the intimate partner that you're searching for. And I've been taking part in Gabby Bernstein's Manifesting
Mm.
Challenge. I've done that 3 years on the bounce now, and it's always great in January to lift up your energies because it's dark and dismal. It's just, but in the community, there are people there that join the Manifesting Challenge to find the partner of their dreams. And as they're coming to the end, they're like, well, I haven't found the partner of my dreams. I wanted to restore a previous relationship, and now he's moved on. And actually, you kind of want to chime in and go, that's not what, no, no,
This is
no, that's not
about.
the path. So what do you mean when you say, when you encourage people and support people to become the intimate partner that they're searching for? What does that mean
Well,
for you?
well, I have an interesting story. I'll just start with this because my younger cousin was in town, and my daughter went out with them this weekend, and I brought her downtown, and it was late, so I knew I wasn't going to have to come all the way back to go all the way there, and pick her up. And so I just parked my car, you know, laid my chair back, had a little rest, and I was awakened by this couple screaming their heads off at each other. It was, like 1:30 in the morning, just lambasting. So there's so much anger. There was so much anger going on between you never, you always, I can't stand, just like berating and awful, awful, awful. And I'm sure they were drunk, but I kept thinking, because after she stopped screaming, his car was across the street from me, and he was like crying, and he like fell to the ground. And I thought, from her perspective, like when she was screaming at him, like if he was that awful to her, why is she with him? And then for him, that he was so upset, I was like, if she treats you that way, she's not worth that. You know, I feel like so many of us are looking outside ourselves to fill what's empty in us. We all have like the um, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. It's like we all have this sense of loneliness, or um, we're gonna die alone. I mean, we might be surrounded by people that we love, or we might not. I mean, especially over the last couple of years, a lot of people were isolated, super, super isolated. And so there's this sense of, I don't feel whole and complete in myself. So I need somebody else to fill me up so that I feel better, so that I feel more happy, so that I feel more content and at peace and fulfilled. And I think a lot of times in relationships, people think, oh, you're the better part of me. It's like, no, I'm whole and complete in myself. But so many people look externally, to find the one, to find the one, which I don't even really know if there is the one, because I think there are different possibilities, and every person that's a possibility, you're just going to have a different set of issues that you're going to be dealing with, because
Yeah.
we all have issues. And so that's why this work, this internal personal work, is so important, so that you're not searching outside of yourself, um, for something that you can give yourself. And um, it's not that we don't need each other. We do need each other, but I don't need you because I'm needy and I feel
Yeah.
empty. I need you because I really love you, and you bring, something more to my life. Not I'm 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 less than who I am supposed to be. And so it's this sense of, you have to continually do your own work so that you feel full, so that you can pour from a full cup, rather than feeling completely empty and depleted, hoping that somebody else will fill you up. Does that make sense?
It it really does, and I think w- one of the things that comes through really strongly for me is how that sense is reinforced from a really young age in terms of
Yeah.
your family, your parents kind of hoping that you'll find the right person,
The one.
or even, I mean, you think about all the Disney princesses who are less than a person until they're swept off their
They're
feet.
rescued. They're
Yeah,
rescued. It's like,
that's what I heard.
who can rescue you? Yourself.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely,
Unless you
absolutely.
need a paramedic or a doctor.
Well, this is true. Well, yeah, yeah. And so, how often are you able to get to that part of the conversation with people that come, people that come to you for support, advice, and guidance, to heal a relationship? How ready are they to hear that they need to do that inner work first
Well,
and to support the other person to do that too?
right. Well, that's the challenge, because I've had many clients come and blatantly lie or be deceptive in the session, and it comes out eventually. The
Mm.
truth, I think, always comes out in some way, form, or fashion. And when it comes out, it's like, why are you wasting your time or our time? I mean, we're not making any progress unless you're willing to take responsibility for your part. But that's the whole conditioning. We're conditioned at a very young age to hide our emotions, to be nice rather than tell the truth. Um, we are taught to uh, suppress our emotions. It's like conditioned. It's okay for women to cry. It's not okay for men to cry. It's okay for
Yeah.
men to get angry. It's not okay for women to get angry. And I'm totally generalizing. I know that. I'm totally generalizing. But that's I'm just talking about the societal conditioning, family conditioning, religious conditioning. So we have all of this input of who the infamous
Mm.
they, tell us that we should be, as opposed to saying, who are you and what are you experiencing in this moment? And how can I be a source of support for you?
Mm. And and you in your day-to-day work and through your life see, a whole spectrum of relationships, and relationships that are absolutely thriving, and relationships that are challenging, and sometimes the same relationship can be both in the same day or the
Exactly.
same week. Kind of,
Exactly.
yeah.
10 minutes
What?
later.
There's no sweetener in my tea. Oh. um, no, but seriously, kind of, what makes relationships so challenging? What makes them go through those ups and downs?
Well, it's part of the conditioning. It's partially the conditioning. And because I'm a systems person, I recognize that who we are is a result of where we came from, and not even just our family of origin, but our generations. And so if generations act and react in certain ways, and that's what you experience on a physical level, and that's what you experience emotionally, and even I think it's carried through our DNA. So I'll give you a sort of a strange example. Like, my parents both had alcoholic parents, and so there was a lot of fighting in their families, while simultaneously also having a lot of love. And my parents said, they wanted to create something different. So my parents never yelled at each other. I mean, they had good communication skills. They did a lot of their own both personal work and work as a couple, and helping teach my brother and sister and I, good ways of communicating, healthy and constructive ways of processing our emotions, et cetera, et cetera. But when I got married, there were many times in my relationship where I had this like insight. I go, I feel like I married my grandmother, who, when she got drunk, she would yell and be condescending and rude. And my former husband often
Mm.
treated me that way. I mean, he wasn't a drinker, but he had these emotional outbursts. And I was like, I feel like I married my grandmother. This is so weird. Even though I have these great parents who modeled really, beautiful relational skills, I found myself in this situation where there was a lot of triggers and high emotions and like this roller coaster ride. And so you learn as a kid about what is love, or what does love feel like? What does love look like? Um, am I able to express my emotions, or what emotions am I able to express? What's acceptable? What's not acceptable? Um, and then, of course, you can have traumatic experiences through your life as a child, sexual trauma or physical, psychological trauma, through different partners that you've had. And so you have all of these things swirling around in one body, and then you have another body who has their own set of things swirling around in their body. And then you have these situations where things are triggered in you, the way that your partner speaks to you, or the way that your partner does something, and it's unconscious. It's really unconscious. So that's why it's so challenging if you're not aware of what's going on inside of you, if you're not aware, and continually working on being an observer of your own experience and saying, oh gosh, I'm feeling anxious about this, or oh, want to run away. I want to run away and I don't want to deal with this, because there are different styles of relating. And so that's what makes it so challenging, is when people show up and they're just, they have these emotional reactions, and yet they don't acknowledge them. They don't process them. They don't honor them. They don't speak respectfully about them to their partner. So there are all of these multi layers of complexity when you're talking about a normal day, a normal
Yeah.
human. So that's why they're so challenging, because people fall into their patterns. People don't take responsibility for the ways they're showing up in their relationship. And I remember, it's really kind of comes back to the golden rule: treat others the way you want to be treated. And when you're not doing that, or they're not doing that, and you're not able to talk about it in respectful, kind ways where you both are wanting to resolve the thing, then it can be this source of tension. It can be like a competition. It can be a he said, she said, or I win, you lose, or you win, I lose. And when you have that disparity in the relationship loses. It's like, I feel like, loving, kindness, consideration, compassion, all of those things that you say, I want to be treated in this way. And so I need to work on me so that I can learn how to do that for you. And hopefully, because you love me, you want to do the same for me.
Yeah. And to offer that to the other person and to themselves. I mean, we mentioned compassion in there, and love, and in an earlier episode in this series, we were looking at self-love and how crucial it is to develop that relationship with yourself. But I think we're saying, start there, start to build out, start to give love, be the change that you want to see. I know it's
Right.
a well-worn phrase, but that's the element that you truly have control over. You can choose your emotional state, your reactions, your next steps.
I don't know if you can choose your reactions, but you can learn to become more conscious about your responses. Because you could have a reaction, that was like, ah,
Yeah.
and then you take a moment and you go, ooh, I think I need a timeout, and you can go create some space for yourself so that you can think about what was going on. And that's one of the things that I really wanted to teach my kids, that my parents taught me. It's like, when you're hurtful to somebody, and when you're being a jerk, when you're being a jerk to somebody else, that you take responsibility and say, oh, I'm sorry. Please forgive me because I don't know what happened, or I was hangry. I was angry, I was tired, I was whatever the reason is for your reaction, or it reminded me of something in the past, that triggered me, and I got all discombobulated about it. But I feel like as long as you take responsibility for the impact that you have on the people that you claim to love, that speaks volumes. That speaks volumes. And I know in my own marriage, that was one thing that my former husband was not really good at. He didn't apologize. It was like we'd have this big, fight, um, explosive, whatever, emotions and words and all this stuff. And I would say, can we please talk about this? And no, we're not going to talk about this. And then time would go by, could be a few hours, could be a couple days. And then at some point, he would just start talking like nothing happened. And I was like, but I'm just left with this yucky feeling, my professional term, the yucky feeling where you feel disrespected or dishonored or unloved or uncared for. And if somebody is not willing to take responsibility for repairing how they've hurt you, whether it's intentional or unintentional, and people can say, well, that's just how I am. Okay, so if I know that you like mayonnaise on your sandwich and I continually just bring you mustard, and you say, but I like mayonnaise. No, I like mustard, so I'm just going to put mustard on your sandwich. It's like a lack of consideration. And so I feel like that's just a small example of a big microcosm of issues that you can have. But it's like if your partner is saying, hey, this would be meaningful for me, if you love them, you say, okay, maybe that's not my natural inclination, but because it's meaningful for you, I want to do that for you because I love you and I care about you and I want you to feel good.
And that's so far away from what you got into when we first met.
Well, yes, we had many conversations about what I knew when we first met.
Oh, yeah.
And are you taking responsibility for your stuff? And am I taking responsibility for my stuff?
And what you're describing, just shifting to taking responsibility, to considering your response, it also hints at growth, kind of personal growth, and also together as a relationship, how you grow together over time. When as human beings, as organic beings of matter, we're constantly evolving and changing. We may not feel like it in the moment, but our cells are regenerating over and over and over again. Each breath of air is a different breath of air than it was last time, and so there's a path that we're on, and it just feels as if being able to create that space, and in terms of taking responsibility, in terms of moving forward, you're more aligned to growth.
Well, and there's also in every relationship, your kind of goals and things that you want to pursue or achieve in your life. And then you have your partner's goals and what they want to pursue and achieve in their life, the things that make them happy and bring them joy. And so there's this ongoing, it's really a dance. I don't know if you know Harriet Lerner, The Dance of Intimacy. There's this beautiful dance of your stuff and their stuff, and then our stuff that we're co-creating together. And so this paradox of relationship is this interdependence where you both stand on your own 2 feet. And this was one of the lessons I learned in tango when I was studying tango. It's like you stand on your own 2 feet, you have your own strength and your own axis. And yet as the couple, you learn to lean against each other, but not fall over, right? It's like I'm not pushing against you so that I knock you down, but I'm leaning towards you because that energy co-creates something bigger than what we can create on our own. And so it's this beautiful ebb and flow of interdependence and a sense of freedom and independence and a sense of freedom, and this interdependence and a sense of connection. And oftentimes one person will say, oh, I want to feel close to you, and the other person says, I really need my space right now. And so how do you navigate that? How do you honor both each other's needs while also coming to some sort of agreement where both people feel good about the outcome?
And almost building on that, how do I get close to you? Not necessarily the idea of you. And we talked about the range of influences that you have, and sometimes we set expectations of the other person, or idealistic expectations of another
Right,
person,
right.
and what can be delivered. And yeah, this isn't a bash at social media per se, as it's happened through soap operas, it's happened through magazines, but again, kind of
Disney
very often
movies.
see yeah, an image of what that relationship should be like, or what that person should be like. And
Right.
kind of how does that come through in your world? I mean, here in the UK, increasingly, one of the things that I feel sad for is couples embarking on their marriage, and there's so much focus on the wedding. Tens of
Right.
thousands of pounds on the
This is the
perfect
happiest
wedding.
day of my life. I'm like, if that's the happiest day of your life, that's really sad.
But yeah, because the magic is in the marriage. It's it's in the long term. It's in the moments of silent intimacy. You're not, you shouldn't just be watching TV, but those moments of silence together where you're in a room and you're just content and supporting each other and there together,
Yeah.
as well as on the big adventures, as well as
Right.
dealing with each other's nonsense and their days. But
Well,
it's put
that
them
is
together.
the other paradox, because you want the sense of safety and security and stability. That's the loving part. And then you also want the fun and adventure and desire and lust and mystery. And it's like, how do you combine the two of those to create something beautiful where you have both? And I feel like that's probably when a lot of people cheat and have affairs, is because they're not feeling the mystery, the risk, the adventure, the desire. It gets complacent and stale. And so then a lot of people, instead of talking to their partners about that and saying, how can we input that into our life? How can we integrate some of those things into our life to make it more exciting and more interesting? People just go, well, it's probably just easier to find it with somebody else, and it doesn't really mean anything because I'll come back to my stable and secure and safe home where I know that I'm loved and accepted. But that's not real love either.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
So how do you both take responsibility for talking about those things, saying, hey, I'm feeling unsettled, I'm feeling bored, I'm feeling restless? Because we all have these, relationships are an ebb and a flow and an up and a down. And I feel like if you can learn to navigate all of those paradoxes together, and have these open conversations about what's going on for you internally, emotionally, psychologically, whatever. Um, if you can continue to have these open conversations, that creates the safe container to create all the other stuff.
For sure, for sure. That and perhaps, perhaps this is a really good point to introduce your signature method to the audience. You know, it's just like, well, okay, you've talked about the benefits. What do I do? What you use the
How do
you
I
use the,
do this?
yeah, yeah, I don't do this like adult stuff or this relationship stuff. Um, but the fact that you're still asking the question at 47, or I'm still asking the question at 47, is no, it's important.
I think you
It's
should continue to ask the
important.
question your whole
Yeah,
life.
yeah, yeah. But one of the things that you're known for is the ACE method,
Yeah,
to improve your relationship. So could you kind of strip that a little bit back and perhaps
sure.
bring through some very practical tips that we can start to apply?
Yeah, I wanted, I don't know, it just came to me one day. It was just like, oh, yeah, this is because it is so complex. It is so complex. And so I wanted to be able to introduce and talk about this to people in sort of a simplistic way so that you can get these concepts of really mastering your emotions. So is the A stands for awareness. And it's really a body awareness because our emotions we feel in our body. So for instance, if you feel like you've been punched in the gut, like somebody said something and it just made you you feel disempowered, you feel like you're punched literally, and you get these knots in your stomach, or you feel like this heaviness on your chest, like somebody was really hurtful, and really it's like this deep sadness, and you start to hunch over, or you feel like a constriction in your throat, like I want to say something, but I'm afraid to say something, so I'm not going to say anything. And so you um, one of my professors, I love this. It's like if you can learn to be the third party observer into your own experience. So it's like becoming aware of those signals that your body is giving you. And like I talked about at the beginning, from a very young age, many people are taught to suppress all those things. So you disconnect from your body, you deny your feelings, you suppress them, and then they're stored in your body at a cellular level. And I believe that all dis-ease comes from a result of that impact on your body, that emotional, psychological impact of not expressing. So you're basically holding all this stuff in and not allowing it to be put out. You're not allowing it to go out of you. So it's being stored in your body. And I don't know if you know, I'm not going to remember his name. It was a Japanese researcher who did the water study, and he put water in different containers, and he just wrote on the outside of the containers love, peace, compassion, appreciation, gratitude. And then on some bottles he wrote anger, fear, sadness, resentment, um, doubt, insecurity. And then he studied, I can't remember how long he kept them in the containers, but he did molecular studies of the water just from having these words on the outside of them. And the words that are the negative sort of lower vibrational energies, those molecules of the water looked muddy and dirty and just ugh, just yuck. But the waters with the positive, more higher vibrational energies where you feel better, um, those molecules looked like these beautiful crystalline snowflakes just from the words. So if you can recognize the impact that your words carry in energy, and then if you're storing that energy or if you're receiving that energy, so ACE is having that awareness of what's going on inside of your body. And then the C stands for curiosity. What does that mean? What does that mean that I'm feeling like I'm punched in the gut? Am I feeling disempowered? Am I feeling like my boundaries have been crossed? Am I feeling like I've been dishonored or disrespected in that way? Or, that constriction in my throat? there's something I really want to say, but I don't know how to say it. I'm afraid to say it because I'm afraid the other person will reject me or leave me or abandon me. So you have that sense of curiosity about what all of these signals are trying to show you, because I believe they're either leading you and guiding you to a more loving place, or they're guiding you to a place of fear and doubt and insecurity and instability. And it's not your partner's job to fix that for you, even though they should take responsibility for their part. So it's you examining, okay, where am I feeling powerless? And how can I feel more powerful? In what ways can I learn to stand up for myself more? Or what ways can I learn to express myself in a more open and honest way, so that I'm not holding all this stuff inside? So the C is really a sense of non-judgment of what's going on inside of you, because that's just your body's natural reactions. But to be curious and say, what is this trying to teach me or show me? And then the E is expression, and not expression in a screaming way like those crazy drunk people that I heard the other night, but it's processing it in healthy and constructive ways. So I've done a lot of creative work. I write a lot, I speak a lot, I dance a lot. I go for walks out in nature, try to connect with nature to feel more grounded and at peace. And it could be walking outside and screaming at the top of your lungs, I hate this sucks, I'm really angry, or whatever the case may be. Where people paint their anger, people write music about their anger and also about their love and their whatever they're searching for. So we all have creative ways that we can learn to express, that are healthy, that are ways to put that stuff out there, so that we don't have to carry the lasting effects of the lower vibrational energies. And when you can have conversations, when you can have open and honest conversations, express these things in healthy and constructive ways to say, oh, this is what I was experiencing in my body, and this is what it reminded me of, and this is what I felt as a result, and this is something that I want to work on. Can you help be supportive of me? And so, because we each have our own individual processes, it's that awareness, that self-awareness first, and that self-processing first. Or if you have somebody who can do it in a healthy and constructive way in the moment, that you can both help express and be that safe container for the other person to express. It's that sense of, I want you to tell me because I want to understand you better. We all say, well, you don't understand me. Well, am I really understanding you? Am I understanding your perspective? And that's the part of the unconditional love and the acceptance, even without understanding, because your partner may express something to you that you don't resonate with at all. You don't resonate, you don't understand, but you say, okay, I accept. Unless it's a boundary issue, or unless it, goes against your values, or what. I mean, those are all different topics of conversation. But I found that this framework really helps people bring themselves into the present moment to decipher what's really going on for them, so that they can have a conversation and develop deeper intimacy and deeper, usually understanding, deeper compassion, both for themselves and for their partners. And then also sometimes forgiveness. I have to forgive myself for the things that I struggle with, and I want to forgive you for the ways that you struggle too.
It's just the power of holding that space with another person, in terms of that unconditional love, for both, really, isn't it? It's so key. And when you were talking about the curiosity, but for me, it's not always in the moment, and it's
No.
not always that
Not
emotional
always on
response
your
there.
time.
But it can come through, in the workplace in the next day, or it
Right.
kind of with somebody else.
Right.
And the honest to say, why am I that cheesed off around that person in the traffic? Why I
Hmm.
was so angry with them?
Right.
What is really going on
Right.
here? And
Right.
the courage to go there as well, and not just externalize the blame or externalize the fault with somebody else. Just
Right.
notice the cues. I mean, that's enormous.
Right. And then you have to recognize that there are layers of the emotions. So maybe if on the outside it's like an iceberg, on the outside and the tip of the iceberg is like this explosive anger, it's like what's going on underneath? Is there a sense of frustration, resentment, fear? Oftentimes there's a lot of fear and sadness and insecurity, like I'm afraid you're going to leave me. I'm sad because I'm feeling really disconnected from you. We haven't connected in a long time. Um, I'm afraid that you're going to abandon me. I want to work this out, but it doesn't seem like it's working out. And so you have to consider that whatever emotion there is, there are also layers underneath.
Mm,
Because really, the bottom line is I love you and I care about you and I want to work this out. If you really do love you and care for you, and I really want to work this out.
well, and in many relationships, people will retreat or protect themselves. So I guess
Right.
where you see the sabotage, you're not going to
Right.
leave me.
Right.
You know, you're.
So I'm going to
I'm
leave
sure
you
you're going
first.
to. Yeah, I'm going to do something that does that, or um, kind of that head in the sand of, it's just the time of the month. Or just hold still for a little bit longer.
Hmm.
Um, so much in terms of minimizing, but that, I imagine, can be quite corrosive in terms of self-esteem, in terms of the relationship itself. Can you talk to that? Have you seen that in people that you've worked with?
Yeah. Well, everybody has a different style of relating based on how they were brought up. So if you were brought up in a loving environment, you felt safe and secure, you usually have a more secure attachment. If you grew up in a place where there was a lot of chaos and fear, then you probably feel more anxious when there's conflict. And so that's when people are like, we need to talk about this right now. Let's figure this out. And you're kind of chasing. And then there's avoidant attachment style where I don't want to deal with this. I'm going to run away. I'll sweep it under the rug. We'll never talk about it again and pretend like it never happened. And so oftentimes in relationships, you'll have one avoidant and one anxious. And so when the avoidant retreats, the anxious goes, come back, come back. And if you can learn to recognize which you are, which sometimes we kind of ebb and flow, but you tend to have a, more prominent type. Um, and where the anxious might say, I really want to work this out now. It makes me feel uncomfortable when you walk away. And so then the avoidant can learn that if the avoidant retreats, the anxious can learn to give that person space. How much time do you need, honey? When are we going to talk about this again? 2 hours, tomorrow morning after I've had some rest, or tomorrow after work? So that you give the person a specific time schedule, so that they can say, okay, I can let this go for a little bit. I may do my own processing. And then for the more anxious person who wants to, talk, that the person who generally wants their space says, I need 5 minutes, I need 10 minutes, and then let's talk about it once I've had a chance to cool down. So again, it's becoming aware, it's that awareness of how you operate, and what your tendency is and your partner's tendency, and how to come to some sort of compromise. Let's meet in the middle where we both feel good. Like, you want to retreat, you usually want to go for 3 days, but you're going to come back tomorrow. And I want to talk about it now, but I'll chill out and I'll, and I'll learn to talk about it in a few hours or whatever the case may be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. That really does. That really does. I'm quite conscious that we've spent a lot of time talking about couples who are in a relationship, and that doesn't necessarily cover everybody that's listening in. For some, kind of, they're recovering from a relationship breakdown or a heartbreak, and sometimes that can be immediate or years before. Um, can you perhaps share some ideas of how you can heal, after heartbreak?
It's really interesting because I went through my own heartbreak and it took me a long time, even though I had a lot of tools and a lot of awareness. But I've recognized over my own healing journey that really a lot of healing from the heartache or heartbreak is really grief work. I did a lot of grief work in my studies, and I know you're going,
Yeah.
what? What do you mean? It's like when somebody dies and you feel this sense of loneliness and abandonment, like, how am I going to live my life without this person in my life? And especially if there's a lot of chaos and conflict in your relationship, and you have a breakdown of your relationship, you carry a sense of both judgment about the other and judgment about yourself. You could carry a sense of shame, like, why did I put up with this for as long as I did? Or what was it about me that I allowed the person to treat me in this way? Um, or guilt, why did I hurt the person in the way that I hurt the person? Um, and so a lot of times people who have experienced heartbreak, they just want to jump into the next relationship really fast because it's like, I don't want to be alone. I don't want to deal with the aftermath. Um, I don't want to deal with all of the multi layers of complexity that are going on inside of me. It's easier just to pretend like, okay, I'm just over it and I can just move on. But I found that the longer you avoid dealing with that, the longer you're going to be stuck in that state. And so that's why this inner work is so important. I mean, your healing is your responsibility. It's not anybody else's, responsibility to fix you or heal you or whatever the terminology is. And some people say you don't need to be healed or fixed. You don't need to be healed or fixed. You just need to process what went on for you, and hopefully learn from the situation so that you can say, I want to do this differently the next time. This is this is how I want to change and grow and evolve. I remember when I was going through this stuff, I kept asking myself a lot for my kids, like, who's the woman that I want to be? Who's the mom that I want to be for my kids? What kind of example do I want to set for my kids, for their future relationships? Because the decisions I make now, the ways that I act and react now, they're going to impact them. So they'll, they'll get therapy. They'll get their own therapy as they're adults and have their own relationship issues. And so if you can do that work for yourself, and you learn to have these awarenesses and things that you say, I want more of this in my next relationship, or I want less of that in my next relationship, or even if I never find another relationship, I know that I'm going to be okay with me. I'm going to have a good relationship with myself because I'm going to fill myself up and I'm going to take responsibility for what I want to create more of in my life, whether it's with a partner or with my friend group or in my business, what kind of business I want to create, what kind of impact and influence I want to have on the world. And, what do you want to be remembered for? What do you want to be remembered for? Do you want to be remembered for, oh, yeah, you were the crazy raving lunatic, which I was at times in my marriage. I was a crazy raving lunatic. But I thought, I want to be loving. I want to have compassion. I want to create a sense of stability and safety and security that my kids can come talk to me about anything. And I will try to not be judgmental. I may have my own opinions, but I'll try to be accepting of wherever they are. Um, and if I need to ask for forgiveness because I've been a jerk, then I'm going to say, I'm really sorry. I struggled in that situation. And, I didn't mean to hurt you, but I want us to always have those lines of communication open so that
Mm.
both of us feel connected and safe and loved and cared for.
And I don't know if you notice, and it may not be the case, so correct me if I'm wrong, but that sense of creating a legacy for your children in terms of role modeling. I don't know if you noticed that kind of at the beginning when you were talking about how your parents had that conversation with each other around what they wanted to see
Hmm.
in their relationship, in their parenting style, and how they moved forward. So each generation is creating more abundance in terms of peace and relationships.
Right,
It's like, yeah, so much
right.
stronger. Yeah,
And I
that's
I know in relationships, I wish I had adopted this motto. One of my therapeutic mentors, she says maybe relationships should be an annual contract with an option to renew. And if you had that perspective,
yeah,
if you had maybe monthly check-ins or and
yeah,
and annual check-ins, like what's working well for us, what's not working well for us, what can we do different, what do we want to pursue, how do we
mm,
want to grow and evolve. But that takes being conscious and conscientious. That
yeah,
takes time, energy, and effort, and not using anything as an excuse for not to do it.
yeah,
It's like, what are we trying to build, and how can we build it? It's like with anything. If you're not putting time, energy, and effort into it, it's not going to grow and thrive.
mm. And there's
So,
what I can see in that are the parallels that you can draw, not just in romantic relationships or lifelong relationships, but with family, with
yep,
friends, almost
yep,
even in that workplace sense. Like because we're clusters of humans together,
right. We're
right?
clusters of systems.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So there's so many parallels that you can draw on, and also kind of what comes through again is another one of the probably misunderstood elements that's going around on social media, which is around your boundaries and the what how you'll be treated is the equivalent of what you'll put up with, and that
Hmm.
you can see how many people go, well, again, it's externalized. It's like, well, I'm not going to put up with your shit without necessarily doing the work to say, well, actually, this is how I shift. This is how I show up. This is
Right.
what I attract in terms of relationships and in terms of
Right.
how I'm treated. And that
And
sense of sovereignty.
I don't think there's a sense of um you know you you get treated the way you deserve to get treated. I mean, there's that sort of mantra out there, and it's like, no, not at all. But that's, again, there's that taking responsibility. And even and even there were many times in my marriage where I was like, I know I should be treated better, and I love him and I have compassion for him, and I know that he needs help and support. But at the same time, he wasn't willing to get, the kind of support that I thought he needed. But that was my perspective. And so that was one of the reasons why it's complicated. It's complicated because when you love somebody, you want to. Um, I think if you really love somebody, you you desire the other person's happiness as much as your own. And I think there's a lot of times an imbalance, like, well, I'm going to be happy, but I don't want you to be happy because
Mhm.
somehow that makes me feel insecure. But if
So,
you truly are doing that inner work, you're like, I want you to be happy, even if that means you want to leave me. Like, I don't want you to leave me. I love you and I want to be with you. and this could be a partnership or a friendship or a business relationship or whatever, but it's like, if you feel like your life is going in a different direction and that's going to lead to your own sense of happiness and fulfillment, who am I to say that's wrong? It's your life.
Mm.
It's my life, like you just said,
Mm.
sovereignty. Like,
Yeah. I, and and you can have compassion, you can have love for that person and have them leave. And yeah, yeah. Well,
messy and complicated, isn't it?
it is, and yet what you've done beautifully is bring messy and complicated back to simple. The kind of agitation back to calm, to reflection, and just restoring an equilibrium inside that will bring equilibrium throughout your life. And we've only been talking for 45 minutes. It's like, can you imagine working with you for a long time? Wow. But yeah, I think this is kind of our special dynamic too. So I'm going to wrap up our conversation by asking you to share how listeners can tap into the wisdom, can perhaps be held in this space with you to explore kind of themselves and their relationships.
Yeah, it's really beautiful, because I feel like even though this work is inner work, I feel like our reflections are, our relationships are a reflection of what's going on inside of us. And so, there are people who are alone and they're like, I don't have any issues. Well, you're by yourself, so you're not being challenged, right? You're not being challenged. And that's one of the things, I think that's one of the reasons why people are afraid to do this work, because excuse me, because there is a fear of, if I face myself, will I actually like what I see? Will I actually love what I see? And that's the messy and complex part of it, is that, excuse me, in our humanity is the messiness. But I believe that we are all beautiful, perfect souls with a heart, and we're all just trying to make our way through this life. And if we can have that sense of grace for ourselves, that we can learn to extend that grace to other people. And can you imagine if the whole world was doing that? How much, it's like we'd have world peace, right? We'd have world peace. So come do the work. If you're interested in, improving your current relationship, I've done a lot of couples work, so I still do couples work. I've done a lot of individual work, whether it's with clients and myself, to really learn how to be at peace with who you are and where you've come from and the stuff that you've gone through. Because I don't ever feel like it's just get over it. People say just get over it. Well, it's not getting over it. It's really like all the emotional baggage that you carry behind you is a huge weight that people can carry around for their entire lives. But if you have the ability to become more self-aware and do a lot of your own inner work and learn to let go of the stuff that keeps you feeling like you're trapped or imprisoned, and has that emotional hold over you. If you can learn how to release that and come to this place where you can look in the mirror every day and go, wow, Dawn, I know you've been through some shit, but you're pretty amazing. And I really love you. I really admire you. I really, I'm proud of you for how far you've come, because we've all come far. We've all been through stuff. We've all had challenges, which is why I started my podcast, to normalize all of the things that we struggle with, whether it's addiction, depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation. If you've experienced childhood sexual trauma or any kind of drama in your life, I mean, that's all part of our human experience. But I believe, we're all born these pure, beautiful souls full of potential. And our whole life is about that journey of getting rid of all the stuff that makes us doubt and feel insecure, and really coming back to this place of love and acceptance and connection. That not only do you feel connected to yourself, you feel connected to your source, you feel connected to the people around you. And it's just this beautiful sense of, I mean something. My life means something. And so does yours. And we're all worthy of love.
What she said. I if you're watching on camera, I felt so moved and inspired by what you've shared, that this is why I'm looking for it's just I feel moved, and
Thank you.
and I really honor that. And thank you for sharing, and what you've offered as a gift to everybody here is a bit of a breakdown of ACE and the steps that you can take. So if they want to recap or go deeper, they can tap into that within the bio, within the episode description here. This feels like an important episode to maybe stop and go back and reflect and examine, what resonates with you, what reflects with you, and to find the courage to ask questions.
Yeah, it's very, it's much easier to, put your head in the sand, but it's not as fulfilling. And I think, I don't know if you know, now I'm going to forget his name, Dr. Love. His name's escaping me at this time, but I have, Leo Buscaglia. Thank you. Leo Buscaglia. He is called Dr. Love. He was a professor at UCLA, I believe, in the 70s. And I read all of his work. And that really started my journey before I even became a therapist. But he said, to the extent that you feel the depths of loneliness and fear and angst and heartache, is to the same height that you can feel love and joy and connection and, appreciation and gratitude and peace and wonderment and all of the good things in life. So if you're living your life in this sort of middle of the road, I'm going to avoid all the ups and all the downs, then your life is going to be like a flat line. But if you give yourself permission to feel the depths of your pain and your heartache and your sadness and your grief, then it can take you back up to, wow, I really appreciate the love and connection and the relationships and the beauty of, the world. I'm looking outside even at the barren trees, but it's a beautiful reflection of the world. And so how do we show up and appreciate, I want to appreciate all of what's outside of me. And I also need to learn how to appreciate all of what's in me too.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me share.
And this is, we'll have a bond that lasts a long old time, but, and if you want to find out more about Dawn's work, do tap into your podcast. But one of the reasons why I really wanted to invite you here is that I really wanted to explore your experiences, explore your wisdom more in that that has just shone through in our conversation.
And we didn't even talk about sex.
Oh no. Well, talk about messy, depending on how you do it.
Talk about a reflection of where you are in your relationship. Safety, security, trust, adventure, risk, mystery.
Oh dear. So thank you, and thank you guys for listening in. And I really hope that you take a lot from the episode. We've worked hard here on Exponential Potential to find some absolutely amazing guests, and to bring a broad range of topics that help you thrive. So if you like this conversation, dive on in, subscribe, share with your friends. Just keep exploring and keep growing and keep loving. Yeah,
it's never, I mean, the journey is never done, and you have to think it's a journey. It's an ongoing journey. And so continue to, take stops on the side of the road, look around you and see what's going on, and look inside you, see what's going on. And it's a really beautiful journey, and a co-creation, not only just for your own life, but for the people who mean a lot to you. It's a really beautiful gift that you give yourself and the people that you care about. So thank you for having me. Find me on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. If you want to reach out and work with me, I'm happy to have a conversation with you about what that may look like. And thank you for letting me share. I mean, I can talk for hours and hours about this stuff.
And we do.
So thank you for resonating. Thank you for what you're bringing to the world. I mean, changing the ways that leaders show up, that we can all become more conscious and conscientious and help all of us thrive and reach our exponential potential.
Indeed. So ciao for now, and see you again in the next installment.
Thank you for listening. We'd love to hear your comments and feedback. And if you've enjoyed it, please click on that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and feel free to share. Join us for our next episode of the Exponential Potential podcast. Ignite your potential and thrive in times of great change.